Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is episode number 9 of the KO podcast. We have a lot to get into today. We get UFCLondon to review. We have Bellator to review. I even want to talk about top-ranked boxing. I know I haven't talked boxing in a little bit, but I will talk boxing in this episode. Also, we have a lot to get to. We have Dana White's Contender Series to review, some news with that. Also, we have UFC 277, and I also want to get into some of the big fights that were announced last week. Ring that bell. All right, getting into the card. The prelims, they got off to a slow start. There wasn't a finish until I believe the fourth fight of the prelims, so a little bit different than the last UFC card that was in London. There was a lot of finishes. This card, not as many, but still there was some bright spots to talk about. In the prelims, we had a lot of decisions to start the card off. Jai Herbert picked up a decision win. Muhammad Makaev picked up a decision win. And then Jonathan Pierce had the first finish of the card. It was a second round TKO. And then we went back to decisions. But Nathaniel Wood, he hadn't fought since 2020. He moves up a weight class. And it was a decision win, but he looked really good against a tough Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa is very tough to finish, but Nathaniel Wood put on a great performance, and I'm really excited to see what he can do at featherweight. I feel like his cut to bantamweight limited his skills, so now that he doesn't have to make that big cut, I feel like Wood has found his weight class at featherweight. We move on to a lightweight matchup. Mark DeCasey gets the decision win. Heavy wrestling, held down his opponent. We've seen a new Mark DeCasey the past couple fights. Much heavier wrestling DeCasey. Usually he still is a dynamic striker, but it seems that he's kind of found this new groove in his game. So, I'm interested to see how long he keeps going with this wrestle-heavy kind of game plan. Because usually he would come in and just kind of strike his opponent and usually finish them. But if you don't evolve as a fighter, you will be left behind. Moving on to the prelim main event, we had Mason Jones taking on Klein. And Klein gets the decision victory, excuse me. But he gets that victory, and Mason Jones, he was a highly touted prospect coming into the promotion. He's struggled at times. I still believe that he does have a bright future, but he's just kind of struggling finding his footing in the UFC. I hope they stick with him because I do think he's talented. He's a former double champion Cage Warriors, I believe. But Klein... he was impressive with his striking. He dropped Jones, I believe. I can't remember what round, but he dropped Jones, and Jones just face planted. So Klein, he's got power, and his technique is different. I think he threw like a Karate Kid kick. He put his arms up in the air and threw like a front kick of some sort with his legs all bent, and it looked cool. And it hit Mason Jones right on the chin, and Jones took it. So Jones has a chin. But very impressive win for Klein. Now we move on to this main card. A very interesting fight with Paul Craig and Volkan Ozdemir. Shades of what's his? I'm trying to think of his name. Shades of Ryan Hall with Paul Craig. Paul Craig continuously pulled guard a lot of the time. And Ozdemir did a great job with avoiding going to the ground with Paul Craig. We all know that that's where Craig wants it. He was very comfortable with being on his back. He did not mind. But Ozdemir, again, he did a great job with avoiding any danger on the ground with Craig. And he picks up that decision victory. It's a big win for Ozdemir. He was coming off of 2 straight losses, and both of those he got finished. So, I think he's going to keep his spot at number 8 in the light heavyweight, division. Moving on, an electric fight with Meatball Molly McCann and Hannah Goldley. McCann, another back spinning elbow. Now, it didn't necessarily finish. It didn't necessarily wasn't the last final blow per se, like her other spinning elbow. But she threw it. It connected, and then a couple punches later, Goldie was done, and McCann again runs out of the cage and celebrates. She really picked up this card, I believe. It was a little too quiet, and then once she got her finish, the O2 Arena lit up with joy, and she's always a treat to watch in and outside the cage. She's very entertaining. Moving on, we had Nikita Krylov taking on Alexander Gustafsson, and I was really excited to see Gustafsson, but he got finished in about 1 minute and 7 seconds in the first. Krylov, he's a fast starter, and he usually finishes his fights in the first round. I don't know. I just think Gustafsson's chin is gone, unfortunately. He's a legend. He's a UFC Hall of Famer, of course. But Krylov, the first clean connection, he dropped Gustafsson, and Gustafsson didn't really get to recover. Krylov, as he should have, jumped on him and kept throwing bombs until he finished them. It was a little sad at the end. I'm not really sure what Gustafsson's going to do next. It's obviously up to him, but I would probably say the best thing for him is to retire, but it's not. Of course, it's his decision at the end of the day, but he just didn't look like himself. We've seen him in dogfights taking a lot of damage. Maybe it's just that over the years the damage has finally caught up with him. He fought 2 years ago with Verdum, and he didn't really look that great either, but I just thought it was kind of because of that heavyweight weight class. I thought he was going to be back to himself in the light heavyweight weight class, but unfortunately he gets finished. So big win for Krylov. Moving on, we had Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on Jordan Levitt, and Paddy the Baddy gets the submission victory in the second round, and yes, he did teabag Levitt at the end like he said he would. It was mostly a grappling heavy fight. I feel like Paddy the Baddy's ground game is a little bit underrated. I think he has more submission victories in his career than knockouts. And I know he bursted onto the UFC scene with a knockout, but his last 2 victories have been by submission. So his ground game is pretty good. I think his ground game is better than his striking, to be honest. He had a very powerful message after the fight. One of his friends, took his own life, and he had a very emotional post-fight speech about men's mental health, and I can definitely get behind that. Shout out to Pimblett for really opening up and being vulnerable. It's not easy to be that vulnerable in such a violent sport, but he used his mic time really well, and he definitely earned a lot of respect with me. Men's mental health is a huge problem, and good on him for putting some light to it. And moving on to the co-main event, we had Jack Hermansson taking on Chris Curtis. I felt Chris Curtis was going to win this, but Jack Hermansson gets the decision victory. And Chris Curtis, just couldn't really get his boxing going, I feel. Jack Hermansson was doing a really good job of not letting him get in his range. He really aggravated Curtis. He got him frustrated. And Curtis kind of acted a little out of character at the end of the fight. He was kind of saying that Hermansson was running from him and didn't want to engage. He flipped him off a bunch of times. And Jack Hermansson and Chris Curtis, they're the nicest guys ever. And, Jack Hermansson said something back, and then right after he apologized. But there is a good end to this story. Later on Instagram, they posted a picture together. Chris Curtis, I think, kind of apologized, and Chris Curtis usually doesn't do, flipping off people and kind of yelling at them. It was a little out of character, but I think it was mostly just because of, I think on Twitter he said like he felt like he choked in a big moment. So I can understand the frustration. I'm just glad that, these two nice guys, hopefully it's all water under the bridge. I think they shared a drink after the fight, posted the picture and everything. So that's a good ending to that, but not a good ending to the main event. The main event lasted 15 seconds. Hey, for those 15 seconds, it was getting interesting. And then, they Curtis Blades, Tom Aspinall, they exchange for the first time in the fight. Tom Aspinall takes a step back and grabs his knee, and tears in his eyes. And right when I saw the tears in his eyes, I was like, he tore his ACL or something. I think it's a torn MCL. Disappointing, really, for both men. I was excited to see if Blades was going to strike with him a little bit more because of his last victory over Dawkins, but we didn't get to see it. But Blades striking for the 15 seconds, his striking looks better. And Tom Aspinall, I was excited to see. It's a big step up in competition, I feel. I was just excited to see. This fight, and 15 seconds in, a freak injury happens. That's the sport, unfortunately, and that's how the card ended. And it ended on a really down note, so it left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. It was a slow start, and then the main card, it kind of got going a little bit more with the action, and then the main event just kind of ends in a dud. So, this card definitely didn't live up to the other London card, but I mean, you can't really hold it again. I guess you can't really, say that this card, sucked a lot. I mean, there's still some good moments, just it doesn't live up to the other London event. So now we're moving on to Bellator. All right, moving on to Bellator. I was in the post-fight Zoom meetings, and I did get some of my questions answered by some fighters, so I will play those clips while we go over the fights. The first fight of the night was Archie Colgan taking on Brian Neuro, and Archie gets the TKO victory. I believe it was the third round. Colgan's a great wrestler, so it was impressive to see his striking really get him that win. Moving on, we had Jalen Bates getting a decision victory over Mark Coates. After the fight, Bates was, really critical of his performance. He said he definitely could have did better, and it just, he just felt, I guess, kind of slow in there, and but I think he'll definitely bounce back. He's a very talented bantamweight prospect for Bellator. I think he had a lot of submission victories before this, so let's see where Bates takes it from here. Moving on, we had Roman Fernando taking on Luis Inguez, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And Roman Fernando gets another first-round finish. I talked to him after the fight, and this is what he had to say.
No, I think that was me just forcing it, man. That there's a few things in there that I just forced, like the couple times that I have my couple big knockouts with the flying knee. It was flow. I just flew right into it and it landed. And I can tell, like I said, I can go back and watch this, and I'm gonna be very critical about it. I'm gonna be kind of pissed off, but I was just forcing it, man. Yeah, I just gotta change my mindset going into the fight, man. I let all the noise get into my ears, and I even made a call like I'm gonna knock him out in the first round. And my next fight, it'll be a lot different. You'll see a much more clean and tactical version of myself. I can guarantee it.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
And moving on to the next fight, we had Ahmed Magomedov taking on Kevin Bohem, and Magomedov gets the submission victory. Moving on, we had Rabinov taking on Bobby King, and Rabinov gets the decision victory. And then we had Vida Ortega versus Vanessa Porto, and Ortega gets the submission victory. I talked to her after the fight, and this is what she said.
Yes, and then a big shout out to my coaches, because they were reminding me. I could hear them very loud and clearly, pressure, Vida, pressure. And so them giving me those extra words of courage was making me want to stay on her, and I could feel like she didn't like that. No, I actually just kind of fell into place. I secured it, and then she fell back, and I'm like, oh, this is deep. I can stay on top. I'm like, if she doesn't tap, at least I have the top position. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
And now moving on to Romero Cotton versus Dalton Rosa. I was very excited for this fight, and Rosa gets the victory by knockout. Very impressed by Dalton Rosa. This guy is built like, I mean, his name's Hercules, so his name fits his physique, and he definitely had the power advantage on the feet, I believe. Cotton, coming into this fight, I thought he had the better wrestling, but Rosa, impressive. So keep an eye out for him on in this middleweight class in Bellator. So now we're going to move on to this main card. We had Davion Franklin taking on Marcelo Gome, and this was a back and forth fight. Both guys gave it their all. Both guys were really, really gassed heading into the last round, but Gome gets the submission victory over Franklin. That gives Franklin his first career loss, but Franklin, in my opinion, will bounce back better. He's got a great gym behind him, and what a win for Gome, really. I think this was only his second Bellator fight, so, good for Gome. He had a really nasty cut, though, so he was transported to the hospital, so he did not have any post-fight media availability. And now we move on to the Lorenzo Larkin fight. It was Lorenzo Larkin versus Mohamed Murknedov, and this fight ended in a no contest. Unfortunately, Larkin, I believe they were in the clinch, and I believe Murknedov, he was trying to get Larkin down. Larkin hits him in the back of the head, and he can't continue. So a little weird of a finish in that fight. Obviously, a no contest result is a result that no one ever wants to see. But, Larkin, the positive is Larkin did not take much damage. So hopefully he can jump on one of these next Bellator cards because I was really excited to see him fight. As I said before this, Larkin's been fighting since Strikeforce. So he's an MMA vet, and he was on a winning streak too. I think he was on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak, and this was his first fight back at welterweight, so I was excited to see him back here, but unfortunately that fight ends there. We move on to Usman Nurmagomedov versus Chris Gonzalez, and Usman Nurmagomedov gets the submission victory. Very impressive victory by Nurmagomedov. This lightweight class, this lightweight division in Bellator is getting very stacked and very deep very quickly, and very excited for this division's future. And now we're going to move on to the co-main event. We stay in the lightweight division. We had Sydney Outlaw versus Tokov Musasev, and Musasev took this fight on short notice, I believe, after Patricky Pitbull fell out of this fight. Sydney Outlaw was supposed to be in the main event fighting for the title, but instead he is moved to the co-main event and taking on a different opponent. And what a statement for Musasev. I think he finished this fight in like 25 seconds in the first round. He just hit Outlaw right on the temple, gave him chicken legs. His balance, his equilibrium was all off. And Musasev took his time, landed his next shot super cleanly on the chin, and that just dropped Outlaw. And the fight was over after that. So it seems like Musasev wants Patricky Pitbull. They did fight in Ryzen back in 2019, and Musasev won by unanimous decision against Patricky Pitbull. So I would love to see this fight under the Bellator banner. So hopefully this fight will be made in the future. Now we move on to the main event. We had Douglas Lima taking on Jason Jackson, and Jason Jackson out-wrestled him. He out-wrestled him from the first bell to the last bell. It was a clean sweep on the scorecards. It was 50-45s across the board. obviously Douglas Lima, a former 3-time Bellator welterweight champ. He's now, with this loss, he has now dropped 4 in a row. Personally, I really don't know where he goes from here, but Jason Jackson wasn't the most exciting fight, but hey, he gets it done, and he out-wrestled Lima, and I was a little surprised. Lima, in my opinion, didn't really do much to get back up. He kind of just accepted the bottom position and just kind of let Jason Jackson, kind of control where the fight was going to go, and the fight was going to the ground the whole time. So the welterweight division is a little held up right now. We have a champion, and we have an interim champ. So Jason Jackson, it's probably going to be up to him if he wants to wait and get that title shot, or if he wants to fight somebody else in the meantime. We'll see what happens with Jackson.
Yes, definitely had Greg Jones, and Henry Hoof. Those guys, they on the road every week away from their family, so they know what it is, and they have nerve, just the same nerve that I have. Like they're gonna fight, and they know what it is to compete. So it's like they never, like, I would say, like, get ring rust from coaching. It's like every week they're away from their family, and the record speaks for itself. Numbers speak for itself. You could tell us at Sanford, we've been winning. And we've been winning by knockouts, getting bonus and everything. So, our gym going to be one of the best, the best gym in the world one day.
And now I want to move on to Top Ranked. It was a pretty good card with some entertaining fights. And getting into this, I would like to talk about 2 fights. The co-feature was a very entertaining fight. We had Giovanni Cabrera taking on Gabriel Flores Jr. and Cabrera, he dropped Flores Jr. like 7 seconds into the first round, and then he dropped him again in the first round. But, I got to give it to Flores Jr. He survived the whole fight. He did not get finished. He lost, obviously. He lost the decision. He lost by a decision, but he easily could have got finished in the first round. He did not look good in the first round. Obviously, you get dropped 7 seconds in, you're all out of sorts, you're trying to recover, and Cabrera really put on the pressure, and then he knocked him down again in the first round, and the whole second round I was like, oh, this fight's going to be over. But interestingly enough, Cabrera kind of let his foot off the gas a little bit. I'm not sure if he didn't want to gas himself out, which is very possible because he did land a lot of shots on Flores Jr., and it wasn't looking good for Flores Jr., but I will give him props where it's due. He held his ground, he got back up, and, he finished the fight out, but not a good look for Flores Jr. I'm not really sure where he goes from here. He struggled in his last 3 fights, I believe. So, it's difficult to really gauge where Flores Jr. goes from here, but Giovanni Cabrera had a very impressive performance. And then we move on to the main event. Of course, we had Joet Gonzalez versus Isaac Dogeboy. And Dogeboy gets it done by decision. It was split decision. It was a very entertaining fight, a very close fight, razor thin. It kept my interest the whole fight. These guys were definitely game. And this was the world title eliminator, featherweight title eliminator. And I think also Isaac Dogboy picked up another belt along with this victory. So, in the near future, he will be challenging for another belt. And now we're going to preview UFC 277. All right, let's get into this card. The first fight of the night is Oren Kasi taking on Blood Diamond. Obviously, Blood Diamond lost his last UFC fight. He didn't really look that great in that loss. He's predominantly a kickboxer. I think he actually was a very successful kickboxer. So, if you have great grappling, or if you're just a really good mixed martial artist, you're probably going to beat Blood Diamond. The only thing you don't want to do with him is stand with him. And I think Kose, I think I said that right. I'm really bad with pronouncing names. I'm trying to get better. But Kose, I think he's got the better grappling, and I think his best path to victory is really just taking down Blood Diamond. We move on. We got Nick Nurmagomedov and Ihor Perveta. To be honest, I have not seen a lot of either guy's fights, so not too much for me to really talk about in that fight. Then we move on to Joy Young Kim and Jocelyn Edwards. This is an interesting 125 fight. This is definitely going to be a striker's delight. Both women love to strike, and both women usually don't go for takedowns. So this is going to be a stand-up battle, and it's going to be really entertaining, I feel. Moving on to the welterweight class, we got Michael Morales taking on Adam Frigette. Frigette is taking this fight on short notice, but Michael Morales, I've been high on him ever since he was on the Contender Series. I fell in love with his striking. His striking's so nice to watch, and his combinations are so good. I feel he's one of the top prospects in this division. He hasn't fought in a little bit, so I feel like people have kind of forgotten about him, but he's 13-0, and I think he's going to have a statement win this weekend. And then moving on, we got a very interesting lightweight fight. We have Dracula Close and taking on Rafael Garcia. Close, obviously, I think he can break the top 15. He was inactive for a while. There was that incident with Jeremy Stevens where Stevens pushed him, and then he had to withdraw from the fight because he felt numbness and tingling in his fingertips. So, I don't know, it could have been nerve damage or whatnot, and he says he's still affected by it, which is crazy, but, those guys are so powerful that a push can do a lot. So, but Close, I feel like he's going to win this fight. I think he can crack that top 15 lightweight ranking. I know the division's stacked, but, we can't forget about Close. And then moving on, we have a very interesting heavyweight matchup. We got Dontel Mays and Hamdli Adwalbi, I think that's how you say it. Adwalbi's only 3-0, but he's had a lot of weird fights. He had like 2 or 3 bare knuckle MMA fights, which I didn't even know those were like real. I didn't even know they existed. He fought a lot in Jorge Masvidal's promotion, Icon Fighting. I've watched some of his fights. A lot of his fights didn't really even last 40 seconds. He just kind of overpowered his opponents. But again, those opponents, they already looked outmatched during the introductions. So I'm definitely going to have to take Mays in this because of his experience. He lost to Gane, but just being in there with Cyril Gane, you learn a lot. And Mays is a really good grappler, I feel, for the heavyweight division. So if Adwalbi doesn't get, doesn't clip Mays, I think that Mays has a really good chance of winning this fight. I just think Mays is a more well-rounded fighter. Moving on, we have another lightweight matchup. We got Drew Dober and Rafael Alves. This is an exciting fight. Man, Drew Dober, he is always exciting to watch. This guy's got a great smile, and he's got a very entertaining fighting style. This should be a striking matchup. So keep an eye out for this fight. Moving on, we have a welterweight matchup between Alex Moreno and Matt Semmelsberger. This, again, I think is going to be mostly striking. Moreno might try to get in the clinch and try to take him down, but Semmelsberger, he's got power. He's had a lot. He has 2 quick finishes in the UFC already. I definitely think he has the power advantage over Moreno. Moreno, I think, is the more technical striker. And then moving on to the first fight of the main card, we got Magnov Ankalaev and Anthony Smith. This could be, the number 1 contender fight for the light heavyweight division. I obviously think they're going to run back that Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka fight. So I think they're going to run that back, and I think the winner of this will be able to wait for the winner of that fight and eventually fight for that title. So big implications right away to start off the card. Moving on, we have a very important flyweight matchup. We got Andre Pantoja taking on Alex Perez. Perez has not fought since his title fight against Figueiredo, which he lost by first round submission. But Alexandre Pantoja is a great flyweight fighter. I feel like he's going to win this fight. He's beat Brandon Moreno twice. One time was on the Ultimate Fighter. The other time was when they were both in the UFC. So he's 2-0 against Brandon Moreno. So if Pantoja can get this win, this definitely makes the 125 division a lot more interesting. Moving on, we got a heavyweight banger. We got the Black Beast Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Pavlicek. Both of these guys are heavy-handed strikers, and I really think it's about who imposes their will first. And it's also about who lands the cleaner shot first, because both of these guys, we know they have power. Obviously, Derek Lewis got knocked out cold his last fight by Tai Tuivasa. I've never seen Lewis get knocked out like that. He just face-planted after a huge elbow to the face by Tai Tuivasa. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fights after being, knocked out cold like that for, he's been finished before, but not like that. And then Sergey Pavlovich, he's a very interesting fighter. He hadn't fought in a long time before his last fight. So he's trying to get back on track and, getting ranked as quickly as he can. So, that fight, I'm going to just say that fight's probably not going to get out of the first round. Then we move on to the co-main event. This card is so important to the flyweight division. We have the co-main event with the UFC Interim Flyweight Championship. They made an interim belt for this matchup. I'm not sure why. They could have just not had the belt, and it would have meant the same, because Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara-France, whoever wins this fight is the number one contender, and I don't think they really need an interim belt to say that. It's probably just to sell, to make the pay-per-view more sellable, maybe. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with Figueiredo. He's not injured, I don't think. So I just personally thought that interim belts were used sparingly for situations that a guy is injured or something like that. But they make it for the UFC Interim Flyweight Championship. So, Brandon Moreno, obviously coming off of a decision loss to Figgy. I think my gut reaction was I thought Moreno won that fight. But, Figueiredo did have the more powerful shots. So, you can't really get mad at the judges, for seeing that in real time. And Kai Kara-France, he's been on a roll, knocked out Cody Garbrandt. You can say what you want about Garbrandt's chin, but Kai Kara-France, he's got a lot of power for a flyweight. So this is going to be an interesting fight. I'm interested to see if Kai Kara-France tries to come forward more and kind of just start throwing combinations at Moreno. But again, Moreno, I think, is the better grappler, so you can't get too close because he will get taken down. And now we move on to the main event, very intriguing main event for the UFC Bantamweight Championship, for the UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship, may I add. We have Juliana Pena taking on Amanda Nunes. This is a very, very interesting fight. No one thought Pena was going to win that first fight. I didn't pick her to win that fight, but she proved everybody wrong. And I mean, I think she has the style to beat Nunes again. If she does what she did in that second round, she's gonna make Nunes tired, because Nunes, you've seen it in a lot of her fights, and especially in that Cyborg fight when she became the double champ. Cyborg came forward and pressured her and started throwing. And what did Amanda Nunes do? She started throwing back, and she just landed cleaner shots, and she got Cyborg out of there. But looking at their first fight, Pena Nunes, the first round, Pena gets sit down by a leg kick. Nunes grapples. They both try for submissions. Nothing works, and then all of a sudden, Pena gets into this next gear, and she just starts going at Nunes. It's not the most beautiful striking Pena has, but it's effective. She's just going, straights. She's starts connecting with the straights, and then she goes to the hooks, and then Nunes starts throwing back. But to Pena's credit, she takes those shots. She stays as protected as she can, and she just continues to press forward. Nunes gets gassed. Pena takes her down, no hooks in, chokes her out. She shocks the world, and she becomes a new UFC bantamweight champion. And I think if she comes out, like I said before, if she comes out, pushes the pace in the first round, I think she can get another submission victory in the second round. I feel that's, I know it's Amanda Nunes, but I just feel like Pena's not a good matchup for her. Pena wanted the Nunes fight. She was the only person to call her out, and that definitely got my attention because no one's calling out Amanda Nunes. And when they fight her, usually it's they didn't call for it. Let's just say that. But Pena, she said that's my fight when she beat Sarah McMahon. She said that's my fight I wanted. She called her shot, and you got to respect her for going against Amanda Nunes and beating her. So, this card, there's some good storylines, and now I want to talk about Dana White's Contender Series, which will be this Tuesday. All right, and now looking at this card, I personally don't know too many of these fighters, but according to Tapology, we got this first fight, Costa and Martirelli. This is a 125 fight. Costa is ranked the number 2 flyweight in Latin America, and Martelli is ranked number 4 bantamweight in Latin America as well. We move on to the next fight. We get Dennis Berzacca, I believe that's how you say his name. He is ranked number 11 in the featherweight division for the U.S. Northeast, and he is taking on Clato Romero. He is number 44 ranked featherweight in the U.S. West. Now we move on to a 205 fight in the light heavyweight division. We got Anton Chakjori and Akayo Dos Anjos. Takshuri is the number 1 ranked light heavyweight in Nordic, I think. And then we have Dos Santos, the number 2 light heavyweight ranked out of Brazil. And then we were supposed to have this fight right here, but this is the big movement on the card. Farid Bashrat. He was supposed to take on William Sosa, but according to a lot of tweets that I saw, per the UFC, the commission is calling off the fight between Farid Bashrat and William Souza due to Souza coming in 10 pounds over. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. 10 pounds over. This was supposed to be a 135 fight, which is bantamweight. Sosa weighed in at like 146. I mean, come on. Like, I don't like to criticize fighters too much, but when you miss weight by 10 pounds, did you even try to cut weight? Did you even diet? In the lead up to this, this is the Contender Series. This is a chance to really break in the UFC and make a statement. And unfortunately, Souza couldn't get his weight down. So that fight, the commission called it off. So I think it's only going to be a 4-fight card most likely. And then in the feature bout of this, we have Ozzy Diaz taking on Joseph Pfeiffer. Diaz, number 9 ranked middleweight in the U.S. West. And then Pfeiffer is the number 7 middleweight in the U.S. Northeast. Again, all those rankings were provided by Tapology.com. So, Tuesday night fights for the next 10 weeks, I'm not complaining. And now I want to get to some of the UFC fight news from last week. I mean, all right, there was a lot of big fight news last week. Of course, after I recorded my episode, but I will cover it now. Obviously, the one that I want to talk about the most is Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. Like, oh my God, like this matchup was obviously everybody wanted this matchup, and it was on Twitter, but I never thought it would get off of Twitter. And when I saw this fight announcement, I thought it was fake, and I had to double check. I mean, there was a lot of that last week. I kept double checking the sources, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. But comes out Chimaev, and he obviously had that banger of a fight against Gilbert Burns. That was a great fight. He obviously won it by decision. And Nate Diaz, his last fight was against Leon Edwards. He lost via unanimous decision. But did he really lose? Because, I mean, he stalked and slapped Leon Edwards and then rocked him with the next punch he threw. He pointed at him. He took his time. But, I mean, if he finished Leon Edwards, like, oh, man, that would have been something. But this fight, it's intriguing. This is Nate Diaz's last fight on his contract, so a lot of storylines going into this about the behind the scenes. Nate Diaz, he's been saying he wants to be out of his contract, so I guess his parting gift is Chimaev. Chimaev is a scary, scary man to go against, but hey, if anybody can beat anybody, it is Nate Diaz. And of course, UFC 280 had a lot of announcements. We got Oliveira versus Makhachev in that main event. That's going to be a great fight. We also got Dariush and Gamrot. And we also have Muhammad versus Brady. Bomel Muhammad, Sean Brady, both are great grapplers. And, it's going to be a fun fight. They're such good grapplers in their own rights that I feel like, I mean, I don't know, but right now, months away from this fight, I feel like this could kind of end up being a stand-up because I feel like both of their grappling is so good it might offset each other. And then we also had a couple other fights, I believe, that were announced. Oh, and I'm remembering now, Sean O'Malley and Peter Yan. Again, I didn't think that fight was going to be made. I mean, especially after Sean O'Malley's last fight against Pedro Munoz, it ended in no contest because of an accidental eye poke. I was really hoping that O'Malley could excel in that moment and kind of prove that that he belonged. But I mean, I think O'Malley's ranked 11th. He's taking on like the number 2 guy in the division. This is a huge step up for O'Malley. So hey, I mean, he got the no contest against Pedro Munoz, but if he beats Yan, oh my God, this bantamweight division is gonna explode. It's gonna be insane. So hey, if you like madness, vote for root for O'Malley to win because that would blow up the whole bantamweight division. And that is gonna do it for this episode of the KO podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the podcast has an Instagram, the KO_podcast. I have the video versions of those fighter interviews from Bellator on there if you would like to go check out the video version. Also, the KO podcast is on Twitter. Just type in the KO podcast with Tyler Russo and I will pop up. I am most active on Twitter. And then we also have a YouTube page, and it is the KO podcast with Tyler Russo. Just look that up on YouTube and it will pop up. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. And I hope you have a safe and blessed day. Bye-bye.